Excuse me. Okay, so this is the first video in that group of videos that will cover the basics of PHP. Essentially what you need to know to get going. All of my videos, I want them to include things that I know you're absolutely going to need. Not something that, well, maybe I need it, at least within these basics courses, okay? And those are the ones that they have a unified color theme in the thumbnail. There'll be like HTML, CSS basics, PHP basics. It'll be like courses from 1 to 20. I'm not going to try to show you or teach you anything that you won't really need to know. But the first thing is, hey, what is PHP? Or what is it in relation to other programming languages? Where does it stand? What is its position and role in the world of web development and web design? Just internet application design. Because there are tons of applications which aren't just a website as such, they're more like an application that can be used for just so many different things. And why would you want to choose? Why would you want to choose PHP over some of these other languages that are out there, like say Python or Node.js, right? You might have heard a lot about Node.js, things like that. Why should you use PHP? Well, to begin with, I'd say one of the first reasons is it takes so much less code to produce the same results, and especially if your clients are small and medium-sized companies, small and medium-sized businesses, it is very important. It's very important to be able to get things done quickly and without having to write that much code. And when I say quickly, I just mean you don't want to have to write 15 lines of code just to do something really simple. Now, I included in this logo a couple of these lightning flashes because PHP 7 is exceedingly fast. And many benchmarks, many tests have put it right in around Facebook's, you see PHP, Facebook, Facebook's hip hop virtual machine. The hip hop virtual machine is essentially like Facebook's special interpreter. PHP is a scripting language, there's an interpreter, right? Well, PHP 7, it's moving right into the Facebook realm. In particular tests, it was faster. Not all of them, but at any rate, from going back to this question of speed, it really doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't. And for most of you, and for myself included, you're not going to have, you probably won't have so many users and such a heavy load on your server that you're going to need more. And the nature of hardware itself and CPUs and RAM has just, and as well as network connections themselves, they've improved so much that any benefit that you might have gotten from a different framework or language really doesn't exist anymore. Okay. Another question may be, all right, let's move on to another reason you might want to choose PHP. And I say this as someone who, when I was having used many different programming languages, for a long time, for about 4 years, I used the .NET framework, right? Microsoft's .NET framework, and I used ASP.NET. And there are a lot of great things about it. And I'm not saying it's bad as such. But for my purposes, I really prefer PHP. And so this, when mentioning Microsoft, and I've also used Python. I like Python. I don't dislike it. But it's this, for web development and web developers, I'll go into that in a second, but it's not as good as PHP. So this, mentioning the .NET framework, made me think of another reason, a separate reason why PHP is just such a good choice. Perhaps, I would say for most of the developers out there, it may be the only choice. I mean, the only logical choice. I don't mean only like you only have, you're limited or that you must take it. I mean only as the best choice. I mean, really. And that has to do with this, what I call the deployment issues. Okay? This deployment means getting your website up there on a server somewhere. And that could include hosting, etc. Really, it is really quick and fast to be able to go wherever you want and know immediately. And I normally use a VPS, not always, but if you look at any hosts that are out there, it doesn't matter, HostGator, you could be looking at GoDaddy, all these different places automatically you will find PHP installed and ready to go. All right, it is ready to go. And obviously with Linux, it fits right in. It's like a close friend and brother of Linux. And I had a dedicated server for over 4 years using Microsoft Windows Server 2003. Okay, it was 5.5 years. 5.5 years I had a dedicated server using Microsoft technologies. And obviously it costs more. And those things still cost more, okay? They still cost more. So getting up and running, especially as a beginner, you might just want to open a simple hosting account and you want to be ready to go out of the box. You want to be ready to go right then and there. Those are deployment issues. And you want your costs to be low. PHP, it's better than Python along those lines. It's better than Node.js along those lines. It's a lot better than Microsoft along those lines. It's better than the Java. Really, it's just, so that is hands down. That's a no-brainer, right? Another thing, it's quicker and easier to learn. You don't have 1,000 different configurations. I mean, you do have some configurations, but a lot of these other languages, for example, Java, and to some extent the .NET framework too, there are a lot of configurations you need to handle in order to just get one line of code going, to get one simple thing done. And it's not worth it. Now another question is, are there limitations on what you can do with it, right? Are there limitations? I mean, well, okay, if you want to make desktop software, all right, if you want to make desktop software, you might even be thinking to yourself that, then I should use Microsoft, or I should use Java, or maybe even Swift. Guess what, folks? That's increasingly not even true. All right, it isn't. And the reason is because now we can build JavaScript applications really quickly and easily for the desktop, right? I mean, really, it's amazing. Now you can use JavaScript. Oh, by the way, just because I'm talking about JavaScript doesn't mean I don't want to use PHP as my server-side language. I do. And I have used Node.js, and just for fun, I'm going to put up some basic how-to videos and compare PHP to Node.js. PHP is still better for most people's purposes. From the perspective of most web developers and web designers, PHP is still a far superior choice than Node.js. But anyway, going back to this issue of, hey, desktop applications. If I want to make stuff like that's on my desktop, okay, guess what? You're going to have to learn JavaScript to be a web developer, no matter what. Yeah, we know that. All right, so when I guess what I'm saying is, if just because I mentioned JavaScript for the use of building desktop applications doesn't mean that I think you should switch to Node.js. You can create these things. You can create desktop applications that will do all sorts of stuff with JavaScript and HTML. It's a new trend, and quite frankly, it's unstoppable. So, and you can do that faster than you can in Java and some of these other ones, and Microsoft and the Microsoft framework, the .NET framework. And what's more, it's likely that they're going to be far more portable. In the long run, they're going to be far more portable. Indeed, they are more portable right now, actually. So the need to do that, if building desktop applications was your reason for wanting to choose Java or the .NET framework over PHP as a just a basic web developer, certainly freelancer, working for small companies, that's no longer a viable counter argument. Okay, that's no longer a factor that weighs or cuts in favor of going with those big sort of corporate so-called systems languages. No longer. Okay, now there's another reason that might even be the biggest reason. All right, there are more jobs out there, and there are more, especially for people who are going to be making websites for trade companies or websites for smaller businesses or medium-sized businesses. There's more work in that area, and there's a substantial possibility you'll have someone come to you, and maybe their web designer has gotten real good and he has moved on and he doesn't have time to service some smaller client, and they come to you and you say to yourself, oh wow, their website or their system, it's already built in PHP. You don't want to have to completely rewrite that. So there's a ton of code that's already out there. Again, so you don't really want to call it legacy code, but you can say code that's already in existence. It's already there. It already exists, right? It already exists. Now, obviously, WordPress is huge. It's gargantuan. It's massive. And there are some statistics that say that 20% of the websites out there use WordPress. Okay, that's PHP. Getting yourself into the WordPress ecosystem is something you're going to do with PHP more than likely, or PHP is a server-side language that you're going to use to do that. Okay? Okay. So I mean, that jobs, all right? In the future, not like many of these other languages, you're not going to have to worry about there being jobs out there for you. I mean, there may be some competition. You may need to compete with your fellow programmer, but at least you know that there's a substantial job market and substantial number of jobs out there, both big and small, freelance, full-time, etc., that revolve around PHP. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say that in a moment I'll come to some of the, I guess you could say, linguistic reasons, or maybe even aesthetic reasons why I like other languages, including Python, more. I mean, in that aspect. But let's just stay on the topic of just comparing these different factors. Okay. For example, if you go, but let's go back to that issue of the jobs again. Let's go back to the issue of jobs again. Here I'm in China. Let's look at jobs here. Let's look at PHP. Let's not do Beijing. Well, I guess we could. How many jobs? All right. PHP, 82 pages of jobs. Okay, this is a pretty big Chinese job site. And this is just searching within Beijing. Okay, that right there says Beijing. Okay. All right, 82 pages of jobs, right? Okay, you can see being 82 pages. Now let's say you try to do it with Node.js. Okay. Oh, whoops. 6 pages. Okay, 6 pages. So obviously, what is that? 12, 13, 14 times more work. Okay, 14 times more work. 14 is a lot, man. Now let's try Django. Okay, Django, right? If you wanna learn Python for web development, okay, if you want to learn Python, whoopsie daisy. If you want to learn Python for web development, here we have 3 pages of jobs. Now, admitted, this is China, but you can go to Indeed.com. You can go to the U.S. job sites. You'll see it's pretty similar, right? So Django is Python's web development framework, and I've used it. I've built sites with Django, and it takes far more time to get set up and running. Again, this relates again to the so-called the deployment story. Okay, the deployment process, totally different, and this factor completely weighs in favor of PHP. All right. So 82 pages of jobs versus 3 pages of jobs. And do you know how many settings you have to mess around with to get Django to even spit out 1 page? Even to spit out 1 page, okay, on your website. Well, I'll tell you, a heck of a lot. You know, a heck of a lot of configurations and settings just to get 1 thing out there. And I've done it because, quite frankly, I've been interested in Django before. I mean Python. I think Python's a beautiful language. It reminds me of 1980, 1981, 1982, when I was programming in BASIC, right? When I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I used BASIC on a Texas Instruments TI-99, and I would save my games on tape cassettes. Right? I know a lot of people here, they don't, nope. So here, there we go. So we used to save our games. When I would write games in BASIC, you see here is a tape, a cassette. This is called a cassette. Okay, I would save my games on these tape recorders, right? And so when I would write a game, or I would modify a game on my Texas Instruments TI-99 computer, I would do it. I would save it on those things. At any rate, that's the reason I was interested in Django and Python, is because I will say that yes, I like the syntax. It is more similar to, I like the way they wouldn't end with a semicolon. Okay, no big deal. I thought it was kind of aesthetically, okay, in terms of aesthetics, in terms also of linguistics, just the language itself. I like Python. I think it's great. I respect it a lot. But if you want to be realistic, I would still go with PHP. PHP is much better, at any rate, for most people's purposes. Okay, I know Python in some realms, in some areas, in some disciplines, Python is better than PHP. But not for most people who are doing web development and web design, and you're making lots of web-based applications. That's not true. Okay. Now, what are some? Well, let me think here. Okay, well, another thing is there's really nothing in these other languages, or very few things, that PHP can't do. So you don't really need to go to those other languages. Okay, you can't say, oh, I want to do lots of data processing. I want to do big data. I want to get involved with big data. And I've heard Python's great for big data. Well, for practical purposes, there's really nothing there that PHP also can't do. So and do it really well. So it's just not the case. So at any rate, I think it's an extremely good choice for web developers and web designers, and certainly those just starting out. I almost forgot one reason. Another reason. Some languages out there are more complex, or there's more complexity involved. PHP is very direct and simple, so it's easier to learn it. And so if you're well, I think that's important. I think that's important because, when you're first starting out, you don't want to waste an inordinate amount of time trying to get something done that you can't actually see, to maybe you could say give you some confidence that you can do it, and that includes deployment. So I think I'm kind of mixing these two factors, but all in all, it is easier to learn it, including the deployment aspect of it, because it's so well supported. Getting up and running with your own hosting account, or your own, your own server, whether it's VPS or whatever. Of course, well, okay. At any rate, I think you get my drift. It is an extremely good choice, and that's all for this one.